Welcome to Trento Vision, where bad ideas get pulverized and the truth will set you free. Trento Vision is hosted by Tom Trento, an activist street fighter with earned degrees in law enforcement, theology, and philosophy. Listen and watch every weekday at 2 p.m. on AM 1470 WNN and TrentoVision.com. Now, let's take a peek at Tom's view of the world. Here's Tom Trento.
You know, if you were with me on my if you were with me on my bicycle, I'm hearing all kinds of noises. Yeah. I hear a telephone ringing.
Your telephone?
Hang on.
Okay, go ahead.
We got a phone ringing here. Okay. Okay. If you were with me as I rode my little two-wheeler down 3rd Avenue, over 9th Street to Roseville Avenue, over to a little hill in Newark. If you grew up in Newark, it's Newark. But we got to kill something there. Yeah. We're getting interesting crossfeed here. But back to the story, ladies and gentlemen. If you were riding with me on my two-wheeler back in those days to a certain part of Newark, New Jersey, and there was a little hill where we all used to go and with our bikes and look, and you can see that beautiful lady glistening in the sunlight in the Hudson on the island. You can see Lady Liberty, the Statue of Liberty, not too far from where I grew up on across the river from Manhattan in New Jersey. And then as the years went by, we watched couple of interesting buildings start to rise out of the ground and go up and up and up and up and up, and we're all going, oh my word, look at how tall those things are. 2 buildings rose each to over 100 stories. And even though if you're from Jersey, the guys from New York were like, all right, they got their own problems. But everybody kind of took ownership of those unique buildings at the end of that island. And everybody would point to it all the time. If you go into the city, you got to go to the Trade Center, sure. And back in those days, actually in April 1973, after about 4 years of construction, the World Trade Center, 2 buildings, North and South Tower, was opened up to the public. And as a result, it became a world destination, and also it became a point of conjecture and argumentation over the architecture. They were just non-discrete, square, just buildings, tall buildings, but they symbolized, and to a great effect, they symbolized the majesty, the capability of the American spirit, the entrepreneurial capability to put together the financing to build something like that, the technological elements. Once those buildings went up, one of them, every antenna in New York was placed on the top of that roof for clear broadcast capabilities. Became a tourist destination, restaurant, windows of the world on the top. So those buildings became part and parcel of what this great experiment, the United States, was all about. But they also became, to our enemies, ground zero as a target. And as we know now from the jihadi reports and the intelligence that's been gathered over the past 10 years, 20 years actually, the World Trade Center, those 2 buildings in that complex, were the prime target, one of the most desirable targets of those Muslim terrorists who hate us because of the name. It was a world And in the Islamic world, they control the world, so no one else should be claiming the term world. It was trade. It was the economy. And in the World Trade Centers, business of the world was conducted. Those two buildings generated massive amounts of financial capability globally. World Trade Center. That's why Abdul Rahman in the early 90s unleashed his jihadis to blow up the World Trade Center. In February of 1993, they tried to do just that. And but for a little problem of physics, truck being placed with the truck bomb in February of 1993. It wasn't placed where it was supposed to be. Good chance that that building would have been knocked down. And we all saw that back in 1993. 1,000 people injured, 6 killed, and then eventually through the New York Police Department, the FBI, and other intelligence agencies, the Islamic cell, coming out of Egypt no less, headed up by the blind sheikh Abdul Rahman, was captured and put on trial. And in those days, 1993, that trial identified the threat doctrine of Islam as jihadist, as Sharia compliant, and a good friend of ours, former prosecutor of the Southern District of New York, Andy McCarthy, co-author of myself and others with Team B to report Sharia, the threat to America. Andy was the lead prosecutor back in the early 90s, and he wound up putting the blind sheikh, in jail. He's going to come back in our story in a little bit because quite possibly our White House is negotiating with the Egyptian president, the new president, to release the blind sheikh. More of that in a little bit. But back in 93, a failed attempt at blowing up the building. These guys, folks, when a Muslim jihadi tells you he wants to kill you, and when he tells you a particular way that he wants to destroy your country by destroying the financial capability through blowing up big buildings, when he fails at one, he's coming back for another. And 28 years later to this day, 19 poor, depraved, uneducated gentlemen, from 15 of whom were from Saudi Arabia, just poorly educated, according to our president anyway. More of that in a bit. These 19 individuals commandeered 4 airplanes. 2 of them took down the buildings, as you know. And then Flight 93 in Shanksville. Let's roll. We're all familiar with the metrics of this day, and then the sad situation at the Pentagon. Well, everyone today is taking time to remember, because according to President Obama, today's a community service day. It's a day of remembrance, but more importantly, it's a designated day to do community service for the environment, which is pretty interesting, how to remember this day. But here at Trento Vision, and hi, Tom Trento here with our team on Tuesday, it's another Tuesday, September 11th, 2012, a little bit after 2 p.m. in the afternoon. We are calling upon our listeners, our viewers here at WNN 1470 AM on the dial. If you're in South Florida, you can listen on the radio, or as you know, you can go to TrentoVision.tv. Call your friends, tell them to listen to this show, TrentoVision.tv. And we are, hang on, what are we doing here? Okay. Everything okay?
He's having Skype issues on 10-7 Skype.
Oh, okay. Well, we're trying to get our first guest on, and the building is shaking from the railroad. But it's 2 o'clock. We know that because the train is going by. In any event, you can watch on TrentoVision.tv. You can listen on WNN 1470. And by the way, what do you need? Phone? Okay. All right. I'll get to Tim. Hang on. Technical difficulties. We'll be right back. Stay with us here. Tim Brown. There we go. Our next guest is an individual that was involved in horrible day 2001, September 11. We're going to Skype him in for you, but the Skype gremlins seem to be invading us, even though we tested it perfectly a little bit earlier. But as you are watching, folks, we need you to tell your friends to watch 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But if you can't make it, if your boss is one of those kind of guys that just won't let you take an hour in the afternoon, then 2 ways you can catch each show each day. And we're custom designing these shows to bring you a relevant bit of information, an important bit of intelligence on the national security issues of the day, but in particular, this show is dedicated to evaluating and analyzing the skill and capability of this administration. Currently, we've critiqued the Bush administration, but this is the administration currently, the Obama administration, as it relates to national security issues. So on this day, when we ought to take time to remember, it's critically important that we don't forget we're at war. We're at war with a particular group of people who adhere to a particular identifiable, tangible ideology known as Sharia Islam. Some people call it political Islam. That's not definitive enough. And on this day, there are individuals worldwide, and then about, according to minimal statistics, about 10,000 jihadis in each state in the United States who would love to go blow up the Freedom Tower that's being built at Ground Zero, would love to blow up the former Sears Tower in Chicago, and every large significant building in America. There's about 10,000 Muslim jihadis that would love to do that. How do I know there's 10,000? Oh, that's easy. The Pew Research Institute has done a series of studies here in the United States, and they've polled Muslims and asked them questions. Do you support Al-Qaeda? Would you join Al-Qaeda? Would you strap a bomb to yourself? All these sort of very interesting questions. And there's the numbers are between about 25% of 18 to 35-year-old male Muslim youth in the United States agree with the Al-Qaeda doctrine, which is to destroy and devastate America, to suppress its capability, and then another 25% would not blow themselves up, but would support those who blow themselves up. So we got 50% of that demographic, which comes to about 500,000 people, and 10,000 per state times 50. You got 500,000 people that would love to kill Americans here in the United States of America. So though there's 1.3 billion Muslims, many of whom are benign and don't want to create any problem, you got a sufficient number who want to replicate the destruction that occurred 11 years ago, and we are brokenhearted today, and we're remembering. But that's not what this show is about. There's enough shows remembering the loss and the horror. This show is to remember we're at war. And when you're at war, you have to identify the enemy, you have to name the enemy, you have to stop the enemy, you have to kill the enemy, or put the enemy in prison. It's that simple. Unless we missed something on what war's about. Maybe we missed that memo that the new soft approach to war is a psychological approach. Well, okay, couple of things today. We have Tim Brown on. If we can't get him on Skype, Mark, we'll just...
We got him on here, and we got him on Skype video. Just in case he drops off, we still have the audio.
All right, so let me know when. We'll go to Tim. We'll bring him on, talk to him a little bit.
We have Tim.
And... Then after we bring Tim on, we're going to bring Ben Smith on. And for those of you who do not know Ben Smith, you can go to Dishonorable Disclosures. Dishonorable Disclosures. Just Google Dishonorable Disclosures. That's that new Special Operators documentary, a 22-minute documentary that was put out just a couple of weeks ago by a group called OPSEC, O-P-S-E-C, Operational Security. This group of former special operators at all levels, SEAL, Delta, Rangers, all these folks, got together out of the service now so they can speak freely, unencumbered by their obligation to not critique the USG, U.S. government. These folks got together and put together a 22-minute documentary, basically calling into question this administration's handling of sophisticated and sensitive intelligence material. Tim is on. So take a look now. We're going to go to Tim Brown. Then Ben Smith will be on in a little bit. And Ben, you can see him in the movie Dishonorable Disclosures. So watch the show right now. Don't go watching any movies. Stay right here. You're at WNN 1470 in Boca Raton, Florida. Tom Trento, Trento Vision, your host, with our team. Are we all technologically set, guys? Okay. So now, when I talk to Tim, right now, he can hear me. Tim, you can hear me?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
All right, my friend Tim, how are you from, you're still in New York, right?
In Midtown Manhattan right now.
Okay, and was that the Tim Brown that I saw on Fox News this morning?
Yes, sir. I did a short piece in remembrance of the firefighters who were killed or murdered on 9/11, as well as the police officers, and talked a bit about the firefighters and police officers who have died from 9/11 related illnesses since then. That number is over 100.
Wow.
Bin Laden and company continue to kill our heroes.
Yeah, but before we get into the serious stuff, Tim, I haven't seen you in about a year, and you get better looking every year, man.
Trying to keep up with you, Tom.
Do you want us to put your number out there for the ladies, or what's the deal?
Oh, no.
No, okay. You're spoken for. We'll leave you there. We won't deal with that. But we got to see you when you come down to Florida and sit down and talk about these things. But this day in particular, do you remember? You obviously remember, but tell the audience. We have a fairly large listening and viewing audience. Where were you at 8 o'clock? 8 o'clock the morning of September 11th, 2001.
And catching up with the newspaper as I did every workday morning. But the first plane that hit the North Tower actually flew right over the roof of our building and slammed into the north face of the North Tower. That was our first indication that there was a problem. My job was to go to the lobby command post in One World Trade Center and assist the incident commander, who was the fire chief, in dealing with the emergency. So that's what I did. I went to the lobby of Tower 1. On my way to the fire command station, I ran across my best friend, Captain Terry Hatton from Rescue 1. Terry was a big guy, 6'4", with his helmet and his boots. He was about 6'6" or 6'7", and he yelled at me, "Pete, come here." And I ran over to him, and he had a Halligan bar, which is like a big crowbar that the firemen use, in his hand, and he wrapped his big arms around me, and he squeezed me tight into him, and he put his face right on my cheek here, and gave me a kiss on the cheek, and he said to me, "I love you, brother, I may never see you again."
Wow.
He went into the stairwell, and I never saw him again.
Wow. I've heard you share that story, and that is a disturbing and distressing situation for sure. At that point, you did what?
Well, I had to do my business, and he had to do his business, and we split apart. He went up the stairs, and I went to the fire command station. It was a very emergency at this point. Something the likes of not even the most senior fire chiefs in the New York City Fire Department had ever seen before. So we tried to communicate with each other and figure out the best approach to saving as many lives as we could possibly save. And as we were doing that, word came from, actually a firefighter ran into the lobby where we were, yelling to us that another plane hit the South Tower. At that point, things changed dramatically. I was ordered, along with Assistant Chief Donald Burns, to go into Tower 2 to operate that command post for the second major disaster of the morning. As we ran over to Tower 2, Chief Burns and I conversed a bit. We had been friends for a number of years. So he said to me, Timmy, I'm concerned about you. Be careful. This is very bad, and it's going to get very much worse. He said, take care of yourself. And I said to him, of course, Chief, I understand. And we continued running to Tower 2, and he turned to me and said, you realize we're at war, right? And I said, yeah, Chief, I know. And I'd like to tell that story because there are people who say, who deny that this is indeed a war on terror. And we have to make sure that people remember what they felt when that second plane slammed into the South Tower. A civilian grabbed me and took me to told me there were people trapped in an elevator in Tower 2 in the lobby. So I went over to Tower 2, into the lobby of Tower 2 where the elevator was. And the elevator door was open. So you could see into the shaft. The elevator car was still at the top of the shaft. You could only see about 8 or 12 inches. You could see about 8 people's feet in there screaming for help. The reason they were screaming for help was because the elevator pit was actually on fire with jet fuel.
Wow.
Yeah, they were getting cooked like in a barbecue. I didn't have any tools because I was in the mayor's office. All I had was my tie and my jacket. And so I started yelling at the Port Authority employees to please go get fire extinguishers. And they did. They brought me back a bunch of fire extinguishers. None of them worked, either likely because they had been used already. So I was getting very frustrated. I couldn't help these people. I couldn't put the fire out. And I just turned, in desperation, I guess, my right, and my shoulder bumped into a fireman. And I looked around to my right, and it was my friend Mike Lynch, who was a fireman in Ladder 4. And he put his hand on my shoulder here, on the right shoulder, and he said, don't worry, Timmy, I got it. And I understood that meant he had a whole fire truck of tools and firefighters who would be able to save these people's lives. He was the angel that was going to save those people who were dying pretty quickly in the elevator. I went back to my job at the fire command station in Tower 2. And at this point, we had strong rumors and actually some confirmation that there was a third plane that was headed to our location to crash into us.
Wow.
Yeah, I took it upon myself to actually call the White House. I dialed 0 and got an operator and said, get me the White House, we need help. And this woman also was an angel. She stayed on the phone with me and tried to get the White House. I told her to get the Pentagon, and she was the one that told me that the Pentagon had been attacked, which I did not know. And she stayed on the phone. She finally got me to the New York State Office of Emergency Management, and I spoke with them, and they told me that they had already previously gotten fighter jets in the air coming our way, as in her words, very fast. The lobby of Tower 2 started filling up with people who were very badly injured, badly burned, broken, bloody, and the people mistakenly realized that, or thought that when they got in the lobby of Tower 2, out of the stairwell, that they were safe. So they were splayed out all over the lobby. The problem was that it was blocking up the stairwell, and other people weren't able to get out of the stairwell. So the chief asked me to go get the paramedics to take these people out. So I ran out into West Street and wound up finding the Special Operations paramedics under the south walkway across West Street. My friend Charlie Wells, captain in the fire department, the EMS division. And I said, Charlie, we have to go back inside with your paramedics and start pulling these people out. And he said, give me a minute to get our gear on. They put their helmets on and such. It was very dangerous. I mean, there were bodies crashing down and pieces of the building crashing down and
wow.
pieces of the plane crashing down. And so we ran back. You could hear it up above us. It was very clear. You could hear the floors progressively collapse, we call it. So it was like, and it was just coming down at us. And
now, how close were you to the building at that point as you heard the floors coming down?
I think about 30 feet, Tom. I mean,
Wow.
Maybe less, maybe just 20 feet. I mean, we were almost in the door when it happened. And we ran into the adjoining building, which was 3 World Trade Center, the Marriott Hotel. And in the first floor there was a restaurant called a Tall Ships Restaurant. So we went in those doors, and then the building that we were in, Tower 2 collapsed, and then the hotel collapsed around us. So there was one small spot about 3 or 4 stories out of a 27-story building that did not collapse, and that's where we were. We were kind of in a cocoon. The noise was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. I liken it to sitting on the tarmac of a runway with maybe a dozen 747s around you with their engines on full blast.
Wow.
I don't even know how else to describe it. I found a big column that I was able to, steel column, that I was able to wrap my arms around and hold on. My feet went up in the air. My helmet blew off my head. I thought the wind was about 90 miles an hour. A scientific study later determined that the wind was around 185 miles an hour where we were.
So the wind from the falling building, no one, who would think of that? The wind from the building just was blown. I mean, you are a fortunate guy. You know, I mean, you could have been one of the statistics easily.
You know, that's kind of what they call a miracle, and you know, I firmly believe that if my maker wanted to take me at that moment, he would have, and he didn't want, for whatever reason, he didn't want to take me.
Well, let me ask you that, because I know we only have a few more minutes with you. You're alive now. You've been running around for 10 years trying to wake people up. God obviously kept you alive, your maker. What do you see as your purpose now as it relates to this day and going forward?
Well, it's a few things. It's to tell the true historical story of what happened that day, because there are people that would want to change that narrative. And I think we've been doing it. Our community, with your help, Tom, has been doing a good job of telling the real truth of who attacked us and why they attacked us, and that they will attack us again if given the opportunity. Also to tell the positive stories, the stories about these heroes like Terry Hatton, who ran up the stairs, and even though he knew he was likely running to his death, he still did it. His sense of duty, courage, and sacrifice. The same with our military, who have gone overseas to defend freedom and equality against evil. You know, in the end, it's good against evil, and we're on the side of good, and there are people that are evil, and we need to be vigilant on that. We need to call it what it is, and you know, political correctness. If we placate evil, if we're politically correct with evil, that is suicide. We have to call it what it is. We have to say, you are evil, and good will destroy you, and we have to pursue that.
Amen. I think that's a good note to depart on. I'd like to stay in touch with you. We have this show now. We're on every day, and we're dealing with a lot of these critical issues. Now that we figured out how to Skype each other, we will bring you back on a regular basis. You can report, and whatever we can do to help you in your mission, we're here for you, brother.
Tom, thanks for everything you've done over the years for the 9/11 community and for America. You are an American patriot. So
we're one team, one fight, man. You take care, and when you're in Florida, give us a call, and when we're up there, we'll give you a call.
Thank you, brother.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Brown. You talk about heroes. I got to know Tim a couple of years ago at the Ground Zero demonstrations. As our readers and followers and listeners know, this is Tom Trento, Trento Vision on a Tuesday afternoon. Beautiful, sunny day here in South Florida, September 11, 2012. 11 years after Trade Center coming down. You're at WNN 1470 on your dial or TrentoVision.tv. You can watch us on your smartphones or listen on iHeartRadio, WNN 1470, Boca Raton. When I first met Tim a few years back, we were both standing at protests at rallies to keep Imam Raul Faisal from building a mosque at Ground Zero. See, because we understand the Islamic threat doctrine. Historically, when Islamic jihadis propagate a military campaign to destroy a building or an edifice or something of significance that the enemy owned, whether it's a church in the Middle Ages or the temple in Jerusalem, whatever it is, or the World Trade Center buildings in Manhattan, then there's an obligation on the part of Muslims, particularly Sharia-compliant Muslims, to build a victory monument to that military conquest. That was really what was behind building a mosque at Ground Zero. So we fought it. Myself, United West, Frank Gaffney, a million different people, Pamela Geller, and Tim and many of his friends, firefighters and police were there, and we made many trips to Ground Zero and stood head to head with some of these bad guys, and by the grace of God, that mosque has not been built and will not be built at Ground Zero. I guarantee that. So, is Ben with us? Okay. Now, what I wanted to do today, ladies and gentlemen, was to give you two gentlemen, both of whom have a relationship to this important day, and both of whom view what occurred as an act of war, and both of whom understand the requisite obligation on a human American part to remember those who gave their all, those who died. But also, these gentlemen recognize we're in a fight with a very evil, Tim must have mentioned, CJ, evil like 5 times, 10 times, whatever. We're in that battle. Our next guest is a unique individual. Anyone that can make it to the teams is a unique individual. And our next guest that we have on Skype is somebody who wanted to make a commitment to use whatever his God-given gifts were to fight that enemy. And he said, I'm going to do it in an elite fashion. And he did. Ben Smith, welcome to our show here today, remembering 9/11, but remembering that we're at war.
Yeah, Mr. Trento, I hope to live up to your glowing accolades towards me, and don't forget, I'm a nice guy, too.
Yes, that's what I hear. That's the rumor. Rumor has that. Well, we met a couple of weeks ago at the RNC, the Republican National Convention, where you were running around doing Radio Row and a few other deals, because you are now a movie star, man. What's going on? Tell us about that.
Well, I really wasn't expecting or did not want to have my hand forced to come out in this way. We don't unsign our oaths when we come out of the service. Actually, we get our rights back. We get to live under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So I would be wrong if I wasn't doing anything now, because there's leaks coming out of the administration, whether it's right or left. It doesn't matter at this point. The thing is, that stuff has come out, and it would be wrong if I didn't come out, or if we didn't come out saying that it's wrong, because as people would come to us if we were divulging secret information, it doesn't matter if you're the officer in charge of a platoon, a team, an army, or the President of the United States, or an administration who is running the country at the time. Leaks kill Americans of all flavors, Republican, Democrat, It doesn't matter if I'm out there, whether there's a Republican or Democrat on the teams, which there are both. There's all different types of people. We die just the same. Or with divulgence of classified information or secret information, they're able to circumvent us facing them in foreign lands. And as 9/11, they come here and they kill Americans of all sorts, and they try to take down our country. So, if you're looking at today, 9/11, this is evil in this world, and this is, we see that leaks have gone to where it's information that we could have used to help 9/11 never happen again, or seriously impair the people who did it. So, yeah.
All right. Well, let's put these pieces together, because for our viewing and listening audience, we just had Tim Brown, a former firefighter up in New York, go through his experiences on that infamous day 11 years ago. Ben just gave us the tail part of what we're going to be discussing today, the leaks coming out, which is perfect, the leaks coming out of this administration. But Ben, let's go back. Let me ask you this question. I asked the same question of Tim Brown. I said, Timmy, where were you on 9/11 at 8 a.m. Before the first airline hit the Trade Center? Ben, where were you September 11th, 2001, 8 a.m.?
All right. This is an interesting story to me. You are the sum total of what has gotten you to this point. I had just completed all of my training. I went through BUDS, did airborne, went through SEAL qualification training, and I had just graduated and just got to Wilmington for a little break before going to my first platoon.
Well, tell everybody what branch. Well, I didn't really tell them what you are or all of that. What branch of the service were you in, and where were you headed?
I was in the Navy, and I was a SEAL. I went in and went under the SEAL challenge and passed all my tests and requirements, and then went through all the training. And once I was done with my training, 4 days later...
Wait a minute. You just passed over... I know a little bit about BUDS and SEAL. You just passed over that in like 10 seconds. Wasn't that like devastating, or did you just dance through the thing? I mean, what's the deal?
Well, that's a very tough question, because, sometimes, I don't lead with... As silent professionals, all special forces or intelligence agency guys, you don't come out and say hey, I was a SEAL, nice to meet you. It's one of the last things we ever try to advertise about us. But with what you just asked, the only thing I could really say to encompass that scope of a question, what is it to do it, what is it to get through the training, it's Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Okay.
And in essence, it takes you from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, and it's something that builds the depth of character, which is basically what America was formed on. Is what it takes is basically the spirit of July 4th, the founding of a country.
Beautiful. Okay, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. You're through your training, and what happens?
Well, I was actually seeing a friend of mine who was supposed to go in the Navy with me, and we were supposed to do the SEAL challenge together, but I think he got a girlfriend and went another way.
Different kind of challenge.
Yeah. And we were out drinking the night before, just celebrating and, burying hatchets and stuff like that. And waking up in the morning, I woke up to him saying, Ben, wake up, get down here now, something's wrong. And, with the tone in his voice, I came down fairly quick. And as I come down, I'm looking at it, it just looked like one of the towers had the fire coming out of it. I was like, all right, it could be something. But within that minute, and that's when that other plane started coming in. And just as soon as it hit, it was, you knew what was up. And just to reflect on the bigger picture of what was going on, like in my life, I just finished all this training, and we had been training to go against, terrorism and all of those types of things, and now it just hit us right in the face, and it was like, you understand your calling, you're here for a reason. Now it's time to go to work and do it. It was ominous, it was strange, and my friends started talking to me, and it was just like you're sitting there with this numbness all around you, and it's kind of like everyone kind of feels that crazy what's going on feeling. So I just kind of turned around without saying a word and just left his house and went back home to find out what I was doing. And I got in touch with where I needed to be, which to the team I was supposed to go to, and they're like, get here now.
now, where were you? What state were you in, or what base were you at?
No, I was in between going from San Diego to Virginia Beach. I was at an East Coast team, and I was taking a break in, we were having R&R after finishing your training and stuff. You get like a little bit of a time off to heal and stuff, and then go off to your team. I was down in North Carolina.
Okay.
And just, next thing you know, it was head off to the team.
In Virginia Beach, which is the base for the East Coast SEAL team, and Coronado for the West Coast, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you're scurrying back to base in Virginia, and what happened next?
Well, it was really interesting to be, like, my first days at the teams were right after 9/11, and it was really interesting to be there with everybody on the same page. We had a unified everything. The country was together. The teams were together. The mindset was, there is an enemy out there. There are people out there who want to kill us. It's kind of interesting how, our generation, I know you're a lot older than me. So
Hey. Okay. You're going to be visited by a couple of my friends in a little while.
I'm in New York, so it's Jimmy and Jamook.
Yeah, that's right. You're not kidding. Cousins.
The Trento Goombas.
That's right. We got a long arm, man. We can reach out.
So, oh man, what a crazy time that was. But basically our generation, the only thing we've seen is basically the advent of the computer and the video games, and there hasn't been conflict. We've seen the end and denouement of the Cold War, and all of a sudden to have your country attacked like this, the unification of the civilians and military alike, and the people in the government not having a political stance, they're not politically going at each other. They were unified. So it was real interesting to be at the teams at that time and to start training, because you had someone to focus.
Yeah, Mark in the studio here said that that was a time when everybody had flags on their cars and their homes, and Democrat, Republican, nobody cared about any of that. America was unified to fight a very serious threat, and it must have been magnified for you guys who, we had a fight and we had rules. You can't kill anybody. You were in a position where if you engaged the enemy and they were trying to kill you, you had to kill them. Which is, everyone wanted to go stop this enemy. So you get back in, you get back to base, and is it chaos, or was there okay, guys, here's what we're doing?
No, it wasn't chaos. I mean, with the silent professionalism of the guys there, I mean, it was eerily quiet and focused. The sense of patriotism, the sense of duty, the sense of honor was amazing. And I don't mean to sound cliche when I talk about that, but there was absolute meaning. There was the magnitude of the moment that we were in was amazing, because we knew we were going to have to go to work, and things were coming, and they were going to come fast, and everybody understood that. So That was us.
And where'd you go?
Well, I did some, I did some stuff in South America. When the war started, I spent some time over in the Horn of Africa. Kenya, Djibouti, Somalia. In that area. And then my last platoon in teams was to Iraq to help the provisional government there.
How does that work with the SEALs, like with Iraq?
The SEALs in Iraq? CJ over here wanted to know, SEALs, you're in the water. What are you doing in Iraq? Help our listeners and viewers understand the SEALs operation on land.
Well, just because we're in the Navy doesn't mean we have to be on the water. There's plenty of land missions as there are water missions, but a lot of our stuff does involve, when it comes to water, that's our thing. But we have a wide swath of abilities. And it's always getting better, bigger, because that's what you always have to do. You have to get better. Otherwise, bad guy knows what you're doing.
So constantly adapting to the enemy's tactics and procedures and all of that. Certainly one of the distinctives of special operators. All right, now, you finished, you were in about 6 years or so?
Yeah, I did just under 6.
All right, and you got out to, when did you get out? How long ago did you leave? I
got out late 05, and then I went right back over after that because I was about to be put on a training cycle, and at that point in my life, it was like I just wanted to keep going. We were engaged in a fight, and I just wanted to stay engaged. So I got with some other people who were going back overseas. And did that for a whole other year, and most of it was out in Iraq.
As a private contractor?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. So you did that. That was good. And then, now how'd you go from being in the mix and having to be aware of your surroundings every second of the day, to getting involved in making one of the most significant documentaries, Dishonorable Disclosures, ladies and gentlemen, 22-minute documentary, one of the most significant that I have seen in a long time, and it addresses a particular issue, but beyond that, being involved in video and television, when that documentary came out just a few weeks ago, it just took off, and it's at like 3.5 million views. That's a phenomenon. How did you get involved in that? What is the essence of that? What is the message for America today as it relates to the OPSEC campaign and dishonorable disclosures, particularly on this 9/11 day? I'm going to stay with him. No. Hang on one second. We're not going to do that video cut. I want to stay with Ben. I want to stay with you. I was going to go to show you a piece of video, but our audience is very interested in hearing you and the viewers watching. So we'll keep you to the end here. What are your thoughts? How'd you go from operational warrior to movie star?
Yeah, right. Well, I had a couple experiences when I was out in Iraq, and at the end of my time in Iraq, I just needed some time away, and then I moved on to other things. But one thing that really stuck with me was when I was in Iraq the first time, dealing with the provisional government there. We had to keep them alive, and they had to write a constitution, and they had to go through their first elections. And the significance of that is really interesting. And at one time, the guy we were protecting was one of the guys writing it, and he posed to me a couple questions, just trying to reflect and think about everything. He's like, "What makes you an American? What does the Constitution mean to you? Why are you here risking your life so I can have so I can write whatever I want on this paper as a constitution for these people?
That is a phenomenal question coming from this guy who people want to kill him. You're trying to protect him, and he's trying to figure out what makes you tick. And that's a fabulous moment.
And this was the Deputy Prime Minister of Iraq, and when they were doing their campaign type of things, and when they were, a lot of times they'd come in and you'd hear about somebody's family in their campaign, or going towards the elections, like members of their cabinet that were taken out, shot, killed, family members tortured, and they kept coming. So it was like there was a pridefulness to this. They've got a chance. Anyway, he posed me this question, and it wasn't the answer that changed my life. It was the question. It was the question that did. I said to myself, I better start understanding what this country is, the history of it, the why and how we are American. And even before America was America, rugged individualism was a way of life. So, I took that away from that experience. And then through the elections, people standing in lines, people coming in with best bombs and blowing themselves up, and then the people getting right back in line to vote. That says a lot about there is goodness out there. So I got out of the service. Then I finally got back my last time from Iraq, and I kind of saw the way the government and the establishment was going, and kind of really started getting back on learning history and politics and psychology and everything involved in it. And when I was in New York City, when they got Osama bin Laden, and I just remember how quick all the information, all the intelligence, they had computer-generated images of how the mission went down, how they were resisted against, and how they had to counter them. And then they talked about the intelligence that came out, and that was all within 24 hours. And the name of the dog, even, that was on the mission. All of that, in premise, is absolutely horrible, is rotten, and the media should not even have this as a conversational topic. The administration just happens to be the Mr. Obama, who's in there now. Give him all credit for authorizing the mission. But the thing is, what happened afterwards? Trying to get political gain from it, or to get fervor amongst the citizens or accolades, is absolutely wrong. They divulged secrets. They divulged everything that is necessary for continuing missions from the intelligence that they gained on that mission. All of a sudden, if everyone around the world knows that Osama bin Laden just got whacked, anybody with ties to him stops doing what they're doing, changes everything they're doing, and has to go about it in another way. So they disappear off the face of the earth, face of the map. So it's hard for us to track them. All the intelligence up to that point was absolutely destroyed by 1 or 2 minutes of press release. And now the conversation was had between the news media of who knows more about the mission. We don't need to know as citizens. There's secret stuff. Look at World War II. Loose lips sink ships.
Yep.
The American citizen understood there's things you talk about, there's things you don't, and you keep it between you, your family, or the person you shared it with.
Ben, we're going to have to do this because we're coming to the top of the hour, and this is a fascinating conversation. We're going to have you back. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Sure.
And I'm sorry if I, blather.
No. No. We've interviewed a lot of people, and you're developing a very personal walk through, a very elite warrior unit to other extracurricular activity with a moment of two worlds coming together, challenging your thinking. And we'll have to stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for part 2 of Ben Smith, the life story. And we'll have to come back to that to find out what happened after you were with that gentleman and you came back to the States. But I want everybody to go see on your computer, Google Dishonorable Disclosures or dishonorabledisclosures.org. Watch this 22-minute documentary about exactly what Ben is saying, that this intelligence from the bin Laden operation was, I could not believe it, Ben, and I'll have you back and we'll talk about this at length. But right now, thank you for your time, for your service, and have a wonderful day today. We're going to sign off with you, Ben. We'll be in touch. But ladies and gentlemen, I just want to wrap this up by saying that on this day, it's a memorable day, and we need to do that. But let's recognize that there's a threat out there. It's Islamic Jihad. There are Muslim terrorists in the world that want to kill us. It's the obligation of our warrior class and our citizens to understand the nature of the enemy, to be able to name the enemy, unlike the Obama administration that will not name the enemy. Muslim terrorists, Islamic Jihad, not extremism, nothing like that. There's a threat doctrine, Sharia-compliant Islam, and that doctrine is incompatible with Western civilization. It's that simple. We're going to address this a lot in the future. Tom Trento on 9/11, 11 years after 9/11. God bless you all. We'll be back tomorrow.
Thanks for tuning in to Trento Vision, where bad ideas get pulverized and the truth will set you free. Your host, Tom Trento, is an activist street fighter with earned degrees in law enforcement, theology, and philosophy. To reach Tom, call 561-319